Have you heard about the changes to how everyone in America buys or sells real estate? If you're planning on buying a home anytime in the future after August 17th, 2024, then you need to listen to this. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so I'm gonna give you the truth, read the contracts to you, and explain how this whole thing works. So make sure you stay to the very end. Knowing about these changes and how to navigate them could save you from paying a ton of money to a real estate agent. Previously, when a seller listed a house with a real estate agent, if the seller chose to offer compensation to a potential buyer's agent, that amount was entered into the MLS for all agents to see, and it was displayed on all the websites, including Zillow, Realtor.com, all those. The amount that was offered to a buyer's agent was never set in stone, and in our area, typically you'd see between 1% on the low end to 3 or even 4% on other listings if the seller was really trying to incentivize a buyer's agent to sell their home. The seller got to choose how much was offered, and the seller paid the commission through their listing agent to the buyer's agent. For example, if it was a 5% listing split between two agents, the listing agent would collect the full 5% and pay the buyer's agent half of that, or 2.5%. It didn't necessarily have to be split evenly, but whatever was agreed upon in the listing agreement between the seller and the listing broker was how it was paid. If there was no buyer's agent, the listing agent was entitled to keep the full 5% commission unless the contract said differently. Just because you didn't have an agent didn't mean the seller was going to reduce the price of the home by that amount of commission. The listing agent would just get the full amount. Starting August 17th, because of the lawsuit, the National Association of Realtors will no longer allow offers of compensation to be published on the MLS. Sellers can, and in our opinion, still will if it's in their best interest, offer some form of compensation to an agent representing a buyer. It just can't be advertised in the MLS, and it's up for negotiation with every offer. Previously, the amount to be paid to a buyer's agent was agreed upon between the listing agent and the seller up front at the time the listing agreement was signed. That fee was the same regardless of the buyer's agent's experience or the terms of the offer, and it was displayed on the MLS and on all websites for everyone to see. Now, that compensation amount, if there is any, is way less transparent. It can change depending on the offer that's presented, and it's going to be handled through negotiations between the buyer and seller and their agents. It's imperative that if you have a buyer's agent, that they can put together a strong offer and present it well if they want that fee to be paid by the seller. Before any buyer can visit a house with a real estate agent after August 17th, they're going to have to sign a form that specifies how much the agent that's showing them the house and representing them is getting paid. Technically, it says that if the fee is not or cannot be paid by the seller or the listing broker, that the buyer is on the hook to pay that fee to their agent directly. This commission amount is not set by law. It's fully negotiable between the buyer and the buyer's agent. Now buyers, just like sellers, have to sign a contract with the agent that's representing them. The purpose of this document is to formalize the relationship between the agent and the buyer, and to spell out the agent's commission just like sellers have always been required to do. You'll never have to worry about them steering you to one house or another because one house is offering them a higher commission or a bonus. The agent gets paid exactly the same amount, it's whatever's in your buyer agreement with them, on every house. Remember, unless the agreement says otherwise, no fee is earned unless you, the buyer, actually buy a house. There are two types of contracts that are approved for consumers to sign with an agent, and they have very different consequences. You can have a custom form signed, but most agents are likely going to use the Florida Realtor Association and Florida Bar pre-approved forms. One form is called a showing agreement. This form was last updated in 2006, and at the time of the recording of this video, it hasn't been updated after this new lawsuit, but it's expected to be revised and available any day. The contract typically has a shorter time frame and simply says that you, the buyer, are hiring whatever agent it is that's showing you the house to represent you on just that one house. You can add multiple property addresses on the form, and you can sign this form with multiple agents for different houses if you don't want to work with one person exclusively, but the form says that the agent that showed you the house is the one that's going to represent you, and they're entitled to get paid on that house if you buy it. You can't sign that form with multiple agents on the same house, otherwise you may be obligated to pay both agents out of your pocket as the buyer. This seems fair to me. No longer will people be able to go to Zillow or whatever other website they use, request a showing, have someone open the door for you, and then you have someone else go write up the contract. If you do that, you are potentially obligating yourself to pay the agent that showed you the house the commission that was spelled out in that agreement that you had to sign in order to see that house. It's important to understand what you're signing as a consumer so you don't get sued. As an agent, I like this form because we help people all the time that inquire online to see homes. It's a way to get in front of potential clients. They get to see how we work. We get to interview for the job or try out for the job to be their realtor. If you like us, you can hire us to keep helping you. If not, there's no obligation to work with us on any other homes besides the one that we showed you. If you already have an agent you're working with or that you want to use, that agent needs to be the one that shows you the house. You don't get to just use and abuse a realtor to open doors for you, then ghost them and have someone else represent you and get paid. Again, you're opening yourself up to a lot of potential lawsuits if you do this. The agent that you choose to represent you matters. Agents have varying level of experience, and the right agent can save you thousands of dollars by noticing hidden defects or issues that may arise during inspections that would be a deal killer. I know I and the agents on my team have helped countless buyers avoid buying homes by pointing out things that they weren't necessarily looking for or aware of that would have been money pits, and we stopped them from buying homes that wouldn't work for whatever they were trying to do. Maybe a short-term rental, or maybe they had a pickup truck and we knew that that association didn't allow something that that buyer had or wanted to do. An experienced agent has a lot of value to add to the right buyer. Simply working with the first agent that opens up a door for you, it can work out great and you can get lucky and you can get paired with an experienced agent just like our team that knows what they're doing. But I'm sure you've heard horror stories about people with bad agents that cost them time and money and made the whole process way more complicated and stressful than it needed to be. Just like sellers interview and hire the agent that they think is best for them, the onus is now on you as the buyer to do the same. The second form you could sign is called an exclusive buyer's agency agreement. This is more of a long-term commitment, and it has a definitive start and end date, and it says that you're working exclusively with one agent. It specifically highlights the type of property and area that your agent is helping you in, and it states, quote, if the consumer contacts or is contacted by an owner or a real estate licensee who's working with an owner or views a property unaccompanied by the broker, the consumer will, at first opportunity, advise the owner or real estate licensee that the consumer is working with and represented exclusively by a broker, end quote. Further, it specifies whatever fee you and the broker agree to work for, and it says, quote, broker's compensation is earned when, during the term of this agreement or any renewal or extension, consumer or any person acting on behalf of the consumer contracts to acquire real property as specified in this agreement or defaults on any contract to acquire property. This compensation is for broker services for the consumer. Compensation received by the broker, if any, from an owner or an owner's broker for services rendered to the consumer will reduce any amount owed by the consumer per this paragraph, end quote. Now that part's really important. You can direct your agent to include in your offer that the commission be paid by the seller. You can also direct your broker to only show you homes where the seller or the broker indicate that the seller is willing to pay that fee to your broker as a buyer's agent. The seller, if they really want to sell, can choose to pay the buyer's agent fee. If you're a seller and you get 3 offers, all for around the same price, and they're all asking for the fee to get paid by the seller, then your choice is either to pay the fee and accept the best offer, or not pay the fee and put that cost on the buyer and risk potentially the buyer walking away from the sale. Many businesses have seller incentives to help increase sales. Businesses offer free shipping and incentives all the time. This kind of incentive is just factored into the cost of doing business if that seller wants to sell their product. Otherwise, they risk having fewer buyers and thus a lower price. If you start working with an agent and you want to fire them, even before the expiration date on the contract, you absolutely can. Nobody is forcing you to work with an agent that you no longer think is best for you. But it's important to know what the agreement says, again, so you don't get sued. The contract has a protection period that protects the agent in the event that you as the consumer cancel it early. It says, quote, the consumer will compensate the broker if, within 30 days after the termination date, consumer contracts to acquire any property which was called to the consumer's attention by the broker or any other person or found by the consumer during the term of this agreement. The consumer's obligation to pay the broker fee ceases upon the consumer entering into a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another broker after the termination date, end quote. This means you can't hire an agent, make them work and show you houses, and then cancel the contract and buy something that they showed you with another agent. If you truly don't think the agent is working in your best interest and you decide to fire them, you absolutely can. But you'd need to prove that you did so in good faith and sign another agreement with a different agent. The contract goes on to further say that the agent is due their commission even if you cancel the agreement if, quote, consumer contracts to acquire any property which prior to the early termination date was found by the consumer or called to the consumer's attention by the broker or any other person, end quote. Now, I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving legal advice, but I can clearly see it being argued that being called to the consumer's attention could simply mean being emailed over to them. If you as the consumer are acting in good faith, then there's nothing to worry about. But the document is clearly worded to discourage people from acting in bad faith and trying to go around their agent's back and maybe cut them out of the deal after hiring them and having them work for them. Listing agreements for sellers have similar verbiage, so there's really no new ideas with this. It's just a new concept for buyers that makes them similar to sellers. Our best advice is to choose your agent carefully. This is the biggest investment of your life in most instances, and you deserve to have someone experienced on your side. For our team, the value we provide isn't just being able to open a lockbox. A monkey can do that. It's not just being able to point out this is a kitchen, this is a bathroom. A good agent knows what red flags to look for that will prevent the sale or save you as the buyer money. They know how much basic renovations cost. They have a Rolodex of people they can recommend to do that work and fix things for you. They know how to navigate an inspection report, how to guide you on important and necessary repairs and things that are just cosmetic, and how to negotiate credits from sellers for important items so you're not left with major expenses after the closing that you weren't prepared for. They know how to navigate missed appraisals, bad title issues, HOA problems, condo association problems, condo financials, and so many other things that could go wrong during a transaction. They know other good agents in the area and they have good relationships with other top agents. I can't stress this enough. The power of name recognition in this industry is huge. Agents and sellers want to work with other good, experienced agents that are going to make the job easy. Having an agent with a track record of success can really help get your offer accepted over other offers. Now, let's answer some frequently asked questions. Do I have to sign a buyer's agreement to go into an open house? No. These agreements are not required for you to go into an open house, since the agent that's there is working on behalf of the seller and not representing you as the buyer. The same thing goes for calling the listing agent directly to see that house. They don't represent you, so they can show you the house, they can answer questions about the house on behalf of the seller without an agreement signed. But if you do end up wanting to purchase that property, you will need to sign one of these documents with that agent, specifying the commission, even if it ends up being paid by the seller. Because of this, we anticipate open houses to be much busier, especially for buyers not as ready to transact or commit to one individual agent. Keep in mind, if this is the primary way that you're going to look for homes, you're opening yourself up to compete with every other person at the open house, which may cause bidding wars. Smart buyers will get into hot properties before the open house and avoid the competition. But to do that, you're going to need to have an agent on your side. Good agents like the ones on the Mandel team have multiple ways to find you off-market inventory. Homes that aren't available anywhere on any website and are exclusively available through us. If you have any questions about these new forms, what they mean, and how this affects you moving forward, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to interview for the job and show you why you should hire us to represent you.